I made my first million by age 40, my first billion by age 70, and I kept compounding well into my 90s. People think Warren Buffett and I got rich because we found some secret stock-picking formula, some magic equation that tells you what to buy. That's not it at all. We got rich because we think differently, not smarter, differently. While everyone else was taking courses in advanced finance, I was reading physics textbooks, biology journals, psychology studies, and history books. People thought I was crazy. Charlie, why are you reading about evolution? You're an investor. But here's what I figured out early, and it changed everything. The biggest investment mistakes don't come from bad financial analysis. They come from bad thinking. You can have all the financial knowledge in the world and still lose everything if you think poorly. But if you have the right mental tools, what I call mental models, you can make better decisions in investing, business, and life. I call it building a latticework of mental models. It's a collection of thinking tools from multiple disciplines that work together to help you see reality clearly. And over 60 years, this approach has been worth hundreds of billions of dollars to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders. Today, I'm going to share the mental models that made me a billionaire. Not so you can copy my investments. You can't. That ship has sailed. But so you can think like a billionaire. These aren't just investing tools. They're life tools, ways of seeing the world that will make you better at everything you do. This is probably the most valuable hour you'll spend this year. Because knowledge fades, but thinking tools compound forever. I've spent 60 years collecting these models like a surgeon collects instruments. Each one has saved me from catastrophic mistakes. Each one has made me millions, sometimes billions. And every single one can be learned by anyone willing to do the work. So turn off your phone, eliminate distractions, and pay attention. What I'm about to share took me a lifetime to figure out. Let's begin. Part 1. Why mental models change everything. Here's the fundamental problem with how most people think. If the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. You go to medical school, you learn medicine. Everything becomes a medical problem. You go to law school, you learn law. Everything becomes a legal problem. You get an MBA, you learn business frameworks. Everything becomes a business problem. But the real world doesn't organize itself into neat academic departments. A business problem might require understanding psychology, mathematics, physics, biology, history, and statistics all at once. If you only know finance, you're operating blind in 5 dimensions while thinking you can see. And you'll make catastrophic mistakes because you're forcing every problem into the one framework you know. I call this the man with a hammer syndrome. And it's destroyed more wealth than any stock market crash in history. How I learned to think differently? I graduated from Harvard Law School in 1948. Good education. Trained me to think like a lawyer, but I noticed something. The smartest lawyers weren't always the most successful people. Lots of brilliant legal minds ended up broke or miserable. Meanwhile, some people with less formal education built enormous fortunes and lived wonderful lives. Why? Because they had better thinking tools. They could see patterns that others missed. They could avoid mistakes that others stumbled into blindly. So I made a decision that changed my life. I would become a learning machine, not just in law, not just in business, in everything. I started reading obsessively across every discipline I could find: physics and mathematics, biology and chemistry, psychology and sociology, history and philosophy, engineering, and statistics. People thought I was wasting time. Charlie, why are you reading Darwin? You're a lawyer. But I saw something they didn't. The principles that govern physical systems also govern business systems. The forces that drive biological evolution also drive market evolution. The psychological biases that cause individual mistakes also cause investment mistakes. Everything is connected, and if you understand the fundamental principles across multiple disciplines, you can see things others can't. The latticework of mental models. Here's the key insight that made me rich. You need to build a latticework of mental models from multiple disciplines. A latticework is a network, a web of interconnected ideas that reinforce each other. Think of it like this. If you're trying to understand a business and you only use financial analysis, you're looking at it through one lens. You see in one dimension. But if you also apply psychological models, physical models, biological models, mathematical models, and historical models, now you're seeing in multiple dimensions. You're seeing reality more clearly than anyone else in the room. And that's not just an advantage. In investing, it's the only sustainable advantage. Most people are too lazy to build a latticework of mental models. They want the shortcut, the checklist, the formula. But it doesn't work that way. Building a latticework requires broad reading, deep thinking, pattern recognition, and continuous lifelong learning. Most people won't do this work. They'll watch a few YouTube videos, read a few summaries, and think they understand. They don't. Real understanding takes years, sometimes decades. But because most people won't do this work, the people who do have a massive permanent compounding advantage. Now let's get into the specific models that made me a billionaire. Mental model. 1. Inversion. Approach problems backwards. Instead of, how do I succeed? Ask, how would I fail? This is my favorite mental model. I use it multiple times every day. It saved me from more catastrophic mistakes than everything else combined. The German mathematician Carl Jacobi said, invert, always invert. Most people think forward. How do I get rich? How do I build a great business? How do I find a good investment? I think backward. How do people go broke? Now, don't do those things. What kills businesses? Now, avoid those things. What makes investments terrible? Now, stay away from those. Forward thinking leads to action plans and ambitions. Backward thinking, inversion, leads to avoiding stupidity. And as I've said many times, it is remarkable how much long-term advantage people like us have gotten by trying to be consistently not stupid, instead of trying to be very intelligent. Why inversion works. First, it's easier to identify failure modes than success paths. There are infinite ways to succeed at something, but usually only a handful of ways to fail catastrophically. Second, avoiding stupidity is more reliable than seeking brilliance. You don't need to be a genius to avoid dumb mistakes, but even geniuses make catastrophic errors when they don't think about what could go wrong. Third, it forces brutal honesty. Forward thinking allows for wishful thinking. Inversion forces you to confront uncomfortable realities. Real examples. Building wealth. Forward. How do I make money? Find hot stocks, start a business, get a high-paying job. Building wealth. Inversion. How do people lose money? Over-leveraging, chasing hot stocks, selling during crashes, paying high fees, lifestyle inflation. By simply avoiding these mistakes, you'll beat most investors. Happy life. Forward. How do I become happy? Make more money, achieve more success, buy nicer things. Happy life. Inversion. What makes people miserable? Working jobs they hate, marrying the wrong person, having no close relationships, chronic comparison to others, health problems from neglect. Avoid these sources of misery, and you'll be happier than most people. When Warren and I evaluate an investment, we spend most of our time asking negative questions. What could kill this business? What am I missing? What could go catastrophically wrong? Why might this be a terrible idea? Only after we've thoroughly examined every way the investment could fail do we consider the upside. Your application. For your next major decision, state your goal clearly, then invert it. Ask, what would guarantee that I fail to achieve this? List everything that would cause failure, then systematically avoid those things. This is more powerful than any how to succeed framework. Mental model, or a 2. Circle of competence. Know what you know what you don't know, and ruthlessly stay within your circle. This sounds simple. It's not. Most people drastically overestimate what they understand. They read a few articles, listen to a podcast, take a course, and suddenly they think they're experts. They're not. Real competence takes years to build, sometimes decades. How it works. Your circle of competence is the set of subjects you truly understand at a deep, fundamental level. Not surface knowledge, not, I read about it once. Deep understanding, the kind where you can predict outcomes, understand second and third order effects, and know what could go wrong. For me, my circle includes business economics, human psychology, certain industries I've studied for decades, the mathematics of compounding, and how incentives drive behavior. Outside my circle, biotech, most high-tech businesses, cryptocurrency, foreign markets where I don't understand the culture, and industries that change too rapidly. The fatal mistake. The greatest losses in investing come from stepping outside your circle of competence. Let me tell you a story. In the late 1990s, everyone was making money in technology stocks, internet companies with no profits, no business models, but revolutionary ideas. The returns were extraordinary. 50%, 100%, 200% in months. People called Warren and me idiots for sitting it out. You don't understand technology, old men. They were right. We didn't understand those businesses. So we sat on our hands while everyone else got rich on paper. Then 2000 happened. The bubble popped. Trillions of dollars evaporated. People who'd made millions lost everything. Smart people. Good people. Why? Because they stepped outside their circle of competence. Warren and I, we didn't lose a penny because we stayed in our circle. How I apply this? Every investment opportunity I ask, do I truly understand this business? Can I predict what it will look like in 10 years? Do I understand what could kill this business? Could I explain this to a smart 12-year-old? If the answer is no or maybe, I pass. Doesn't matter how attractive it looks. Doesn't matter if everyone else is investing. I stay in my circle. Draw your circle of competence right now. Be honest. Be brutal. What do you actually understand deeply? Industries you've worked in for 10+ years. Skills you've developed through thousands of hours. Fields you've studied obsessively. That's your circle. Everything else you don't understand as well as you think. The good news, you can expand your circle. But it takes years of study and real experience. Remember, it's not about how big your circle is, it's about staying inside it. Mental model number 3, opportunity cost. Every decision has a hidden cost, the value of the best alternative you're giving up. This might be the most underappreciated mental model in all of decision-making. Most people only think about direct costs. They completely miss the bigger cost, what they're not doing. How it works. You have $100,000 to invest. Investment A returns 8% per year. Investment B returns 12% per year. Most people think investment A makes me money, so it's good. Wrong. The real cost of choosing investment A isn't just the money you invest. It's the 4% per year you're not making by not choosing investment B. Over 30 years, investment A gives you $1,006,000. Investment B gives you $2,296,000. By choosing the good investment over the great one, you lost almost $2 million. That's opportunity cost. The time application? This is even more critical with time. You can make more money. You can never make more time. Every hour you spend doing something is an hour you can't spend doing something else. Every hour watching TV equals an hour not learning high-value skills. Every year in a mediocre job equals a year not spent in a career that compounds your skills. Every decade in a bad relationship equals a decade not spent finding and building with the right partner. Time has infinite opportunity cost because it's the one resource you can never get back. How I think about opportunity cost. Warren and I have always said no to 99% of opportunities, not because they're bad opportunities, but because they're not the best use of our time and capital. Every yes to something good is a no to something potentially great. People often ask, Charlie, why don't you invest in this hot sector? You could make good money. My response, compared to what? Maybe I could make 15% in that hot sector, but if I can make 25% investing in businesses I understand deeply, then investing in the hot sector costs me 10% per year. That's a massive opportunity cost. The cost of learning the wrong things. You spend 4 years getting a degree in something you'll never use. Opportunity cost. 4 years you could have spent learning high-value, practical skills. The cost of busy work. You spend your day doing low-value tasks. Opportunity cost. Not doing the few high-value tasks that actually move the needle. The cost of bad relationships. You spend time with people who drain your energy. Opportunity cost. Not spending that time with inspiring, successful people. The cost of mediocrity. You settle for good enough in your career or investments. Opportunity cost. The great opportunities you never pursued. Millionaires say yes to good opportunities. Billionaires say no to good opportunities and wait patiently for great ones. Warren and I have sat on tens of billions of dollars in cash for years at a time, waiting for the right opportunity. People called us idiots. You're missing out on market gains. But we understood opportunity cost. Deploying capital in mediocre opportunities at 8% means that capital isn't available when a great opportunity at 25% appears. So we wait, sometimes for years. Then when crisis hits and great opportunities appear at massive discounts, we deploy billions at extraordinary terms. Before you say yes to anything, ask, what am I giving up by doing this? Is this the best use of my limited time, money, and energy? Am I settling for good when I could wait for great? Learn to say no to good things so you can say yes to great things. Mental model. 4. Incentives. Show me the incentive, and I'll show you the outcome. People respond to incentives powerfully, predictably, and often unconsciously. If I had to choose just one mental model to keep, it would be this one. Understanding incentives is understanding human behavior. And if you don't understand human behavior, you can't predict what will happen in business, investing, or life. How it works. Humans are incentive-driven machines. We like to think we're rational, ethical, principled beings who act according to our values. We're not. We act according to our incentives, and we're often not even aware we're doing it. Let's look at the FedEx story. FedEx had a major operational problem. Packages weren't getting sorted fast enough, massive delays, unhappy customers, mounting losses. Management tried everything: better training, more supervisors, motivational speeches, performance reviews, threats of termination. Nothing worked. Then someone figured out the problem. Workers were paid by the hour. So rational, incentive-driven humans work slowly to maximize their hours and earn more money. The solution? Pay them by the shift, not by the hour. Suddenly, workers wanted to finish as quickly as possible so they could go home. Problem solved overnight. Same people, different incentive, completely different outcome. Why? Incentives trump everything. I've seen brilliant people make idiotic decisions because of bad incentives. I've seen ethical people become corrupt because of bad incentives. I've seen entire industries destroy themselves because of misaligned incentives. Incentives override intelligence, ethics, training, and good intentions. Real-world examples: Wall Street analysts. They're paid to generate trading commissions and investment banking fees, not to give accurate research. Result? Most stock recommendations are worthless or worse. Real estate agents. They're incentivized to close deals quickly, not to get you the best price. On a $500,000 house, if they get you $520K instead of $500K, they make an extra $600 for weeks of additional work. But you make an extra $20,000. Misaligned incentives. Fund managers. Most are paid 2 and 20, 2% of assets under management plus 20% of gains. This creates a perverse incentive to gather as many assets as possible, regardless of return potential. Why? Because 2% of $1 billion is $20 million per year, risk-free. Corporate executives, paid in stock options. They're incentivized to maximize short-term stock price, not build long-term value. So they manipulate earnings, buy back stock at high prices, make short-sighted decisions, anything to pump the stock price so their options pay out. Here's what makes incentives so dangerous. People don't even realize they're being influenced. A doctor genuinely believes you need that expensive procedure, but he also makes $10,000 from it. His judgment is unconsciously biased. A financial advisor genuinely believes this mutual fund is good for you, but she also gets a 5% commission from selling it. Her recommendation is unconsciously biased. This isn't about bad people. It's about how human brains work. We rationalize decisions that benefit us while genuinely believing we're being objective. How I use this. Before I trust anyone's advice, I ask, what's their incentive? What do they gain if I follow their advice? What do they lose if I don't? Are their incentives aligned with mine or opposed to mine? If incentives aren't aligned, I don't trust the advice, no matter how smart or well-intentioned the person seems. I also design systems with good incentives. At Berkshire, we pay our insurance managers based on underwriting profits, not premium volume. This incentivizes disciplined underwriting, not reckless growth. We structure deals so that everyone wins if the business succeeds long-term. No incentive for short-term gains. We avoid compensation systems that reward bad behavior. Your application, always ask, what's the incentive here? When someone gives you advice, what do they gain? When you're making a decision, what are you really optimizing for? When designing a system, what behavior are you actually encouraging? Never trust advice from someone whose incentives are misaligned with yours. And never create incentive systems that encourage the wrong behavior. Get the incentives right, and everything else follows. Mental model, Number 5, compounding small advantages compound into massive advantages over time. Small disadvantages compound into catastrophic disadvantages. Einstein allegedly called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. He was right. But compounding doesn't just apply to money. It applies to knowledge, skills, relationships, reputation, habits, and mistakes. The mathematics: $10,000 invested at 10% annual returns, year 10, 25,937, year 20, 67,275, year 30, 174,494, year 40, 452,593, year 50, 1,033,909. The same initial investment, same annual return, but the difference between year 10 and year 50 is astronomical. Why? Because compound interest is massively backloaded. The magic doesn't happen in the first decade, it happens in the fourth, fifth, and sixth decades. This is why Warren and I never retired. We understood that the longer we stayed in the game, the more powerful the compounding became. Where most people fail. Mistake 1. They quit too early. They invest for 5 to 10 years, see modest results, get discouraged, and give up. They quit right before the exponential curve kicks in. Mistake 2. They interrupt the compounding. They make money, then spend it. They cash out. They reset the clock to zero. Warren and I have been compounding for 60-plus years without major interruptions. That's our entire edge. Not genius, not luck. Just continuous compounding over 6 decades. Knowledge compounds. Read 30 minutes per day for 40 years, and you've read 800 books. You become one of the most knowledgeable people alive. But it's even better than that. The knowledge from book 400 combines with knowledge from books 1 to 399 to create insights that someone who's read 10 books could never see. Skills compound. Practice deliberately for 1 hour per day. After 30 years, you're in the top 0.1%. The skill gains in year 30 build on everything you learned in years 129. Relationships compound. Make one genuine connection per month. Nurture those relationships over decades. After 40 years, you have a network of 480 genuine relationships built on decades of trust. That network becomes one of your most valuable assets. Reputation compounds. Do good work consistently, be ethical, keep your word. Over decades, you become known as someone trustworthy. Your reputation precedes you. This takes decades to build, but once built, it's worth billions. Mistakes compound too. Small bad decisions create bad habits. Bad habits lead to bigger bad decisions. This is why I'm obsessive about avoiding stupidity, because bad decisions compound just as powerfully as good ones. The rule of 72, quick mental math for compounding. To figure out how long it takes to double your money, divide 72 by the annual return, 10% return. 72 does 10, 7.2 years to double, 12% return. 72, 12, 6 years to double. Going from 8% to 12% doesn't sound like much, just 4 percentage points. But over 50 years, 8% turns $10,000 into $469,916, while 12% turns it into $2,090, $212. That 4% difference is worth $2.4 million. How I apply this? Every decision I ask, will this compound positively or negatively over time? If something will compound negatively, I avoid it at all costs. If something will compound positively, I protect it fiercely and give it time. Never interrupt positive compounding unnecessarily. Play long-term games with long-term people. Compound knowledge daily by reading. Ruthlessly avoid reverse compounding. The first rule of compounding, never interrupt it unnecessarily. The second rule, give it decades, not years. The third rule, avoid reverse compounding at all costs. Mental model. Per 6. Probabilistic thinking. Nothing is certain. Everything is a probability. Think in terms of odds, not absolutes. Most people think in binary terms. Yes or no, right or wrong, will happen or won't happen. The world doesn't work that way. The world works in probabilities. How it works? Instead of asking, will this work? Ask, what are the odds this works? Instead of saying, this investment will double, say, there's a 60% chance this doubles, a 30% chance it stays flat, and a 10% chance I lose everything. This shift in thinking changes everything. The expected value calculation. Expected value equals the sum of each outcome's probability multiplied by its value. Investment. A. 90% chance of 10% return, 10% chance of losing everything. Expected value, 1%. Don't invest. Investment. B. 60% chance of 50% return, 30% chance of breaking even, 10% chance of losing 20%. Expected value, 28%. Invest heavily. Investment. A sounds safer, 90% win rate, but probabilistic thinking reveals investment B is far superior. The fat tails problem. Most people think in terms of normal distributions where extreme outcomes are rare. But in investing and business, we have fat tails. Extreme events happen far more often than models predict. The 2008 financial crisis, the dot-com crash, COVID-19, these weren't supposed to happen. They were Six Sigma events, yet they happen every 10 to 20 years. So I always assume things that seem impossible are merely very unlikely. Things that seem certain are merely very likely. Catastrophic losses are always possible. Nothing is guaranteed. This keeps me humble and alive. Bayesian updating. Constantly update your probability estimates as new information arrives. Most people form an opinion and stick to it. I constantly revise mine. Start. I'm 70% confident this investment will work. New information. The CEO resigned. Update. I'm now 40% confident. New information. The replacement CEO is even better. Update. Back to 65% confident. My probability estimates are always evolving. The margin of safety. Because nothing is certain, I always demand a margin of safety. If I calculate a business is worth $100 per share, I don't buy at $95. I'll wait until it's $70. Why? Because my calculation could be wrong. So I build in a 30% margin of safety. This way, even if I'm wrong, I probably don't lose money. Base rates. Before evaluating any specific case, know what usually happens in similar cases. Someone pitches a restaurant startup. You could analyze their plan, or you could start with the base rate. 60% of restaurants fail within the first year. 80% fail within 5 years. That's your starting point. Now, is there strong evidence this restaurant will beat the base rate? Most people skip the base rate and go straight to, this one will be different. I start with the base rate and demand extraordinary evidence to deviate from it. Your application. Stop thinking in certainties. Replace, this will work with, this has a 70% chance of working. Calculate expected values by weighting outcomes by probability. Demand margin of safety. Update probabilities as new information arrives. Know the base rates. Mental model. Number 7. Second-order thinking. Most people think only about immediate consequences. Winners think 2, 3, 4 steps ahead. First-order thinking is fast and easy. Everyone does it. Second-order thinking is slow and hard. Almost nobody does it. And that's exactly why it's so valuable. How it works. First-order thinking asks, what happens next? Second-order thinking asks, and then what? And then what after that? Example, government policy. First order, raise minimum wage to 25 hours. Workers make more money. Good. Second order, if we raise it to 25 hours, what happens? Some workers make more, but small businesses can't afford everyone at 25 hours. So they lay off workers or reduce hours, or they raise prices to cover costs. Higher prices mean consumers have less purchasing power. Less demand means businesses need fewer workers. Net result, some workers better off, but many lose jobs entirely. See the difference? First order saw the immediate benefit. Second order saw the entire chain of consequences. Example, personal finance. First order, I'll lease a luxury car. The monthly payment is only $800. I can afford that. Second order, $800 a month equals $9,600 a year. Over 3 years, $2,800 with nothing to show for it. That $2,800 invested at 10% for 30 years becomes $499,000. So this car doesn't cost $2,800. It cost me $500,000 in future wealth. Can I afford that? No. Example, business decision. First order, cut customer service by 50% to save money. Increase profits immediately. Second order, we save money immediately, but customer complaints go unresolved. Frustrated customers tell friends. New customers see negative reviews and don't buy. Revenue drops. We saved $1 million but lost $5 million in future revenue. Catastrophic. The Berkshire approach. When Warren and I evaluate decisions, we play them forward multiple steps. If we buy this company, then what? It improves and grows. Competitors notice and copy our strategy. Then what? Market gets more competitive, margins compress. Then what? We need another source of competitive advantage. Do we have that? If not, pass. We keep asking, then what? Until we see the full picture. Most people stop at step 1. We go to step 5 or 6. Why people fail at this. Second order thinking is hard because it requires patience. You have to slow down and think deeply. It often leads to unpopular conclusions. It requires knowledge of systems and incentives, and the consequences are delayed. By the time second-order effects appear, people have forgotten their first-order decision caused them. How to develop this skill? Always ask, and then what? Make it a habit. Study feedback loops. Look at history to see what happened when similar decisions were made. Consider incentives and how they change behavior. Think in terms of systems, not events. Your application. Next time you face an important decision, write out the first-order consequence, second-order consequence, and third-order consequence. Keep going until you see the full chain. Then make your decision based on the ultimate consequences, not the immediate ones. Mental model, or 8, Lollapalooza effect. When multiple psychological biases act in the same direction, you get extreme outcomes. These are rare, but devastating or spectacularly profitable. This is where I depart from most investors. They look for single causes. I look for confluences. What is it? The Lollapalooza effect occurs when multiple mental models, biases, or forces combine and amplify each other to produce extreme, nonlinear outcomes. One bias might nudge behavior 10%, another might nudge it 15%. But when 5 biases all point the same direction, you don't get 50% movement. You get 500% movement. The effect is multiplicative, not additive. Real-world example, the dot-com bubble. Let me show you how multiple forces combined to create the 1999-2000 internet bubble. Social proof. Everyone's investing in tech stocks. It must be right. Authority bias. Smart people like analysts and fund managers are recommending these. Incentives. Analysts were paid to recommend stocks. Fund managers were paid on assets, not performance. Scarcity. If I don't buy now, I'll miss out forever. Commitment and consistency. People who bought early kept buying to justify their initial decision. Envy. My neighbor made $100,000. I need to catch up. Recency bias. Stocks have gone up 50% this year. They'll keep going up. All 7 forces pointed in the same direction. Buy. The result? A bubble so extreme that companies with no revenue traded at billion-dollar valuations. Then it all reversed. When the market turned, all those same forces flipped. Social proof, everyone's selling. Authority, analysts say sell. Commitment, I need to cut my losses. The crash was as extreme as the rise. That's the Lollapalooza effect. Where you see it, manias and panics, tulip mania, the 2008 housing crisis, cryptocurrency booms. Successful businesses, companies that combine multiple competitive advantages, brand, network effects, economies of scale, switching costs, become nearly unbeatable. Personal transformation. When someone improves their health, which improves their energy, which improves their work performance, which improves their income, which improves their relationships, which improves their health further. Virtuous cycles? How to use it? Look for situations where multiple forces align. In investing, find businesses where several competitive advantages reinforce each other. In life, design systems where positive behaviors create virtuous cycles. But more importantly, watch out for when multiple forces align against you. When you see 3 or 4 bad signs pointing the same direction, run. Your application. Don't just look for single causes. Look for confluences. When you see multiple psychological forces, incentives, or trends all point in one direction, expect extreme outcomes and position yourself accordingly, either to profit from it or to avoid being crushed by it. Mental model, number 9. Margin of safety. Always build in a buffer. Assume you're wrong, assume the worst, and still succeed. This is the mental model that saved me from more disasters than I can count. It comes from engineering. Engineers don't build a bridge to hold exactly 10,000 pounds. They build it to hold 50,000 pounds, even though it only needs to hold 10,000. Why? Because they might have miscalculated. Materials might be slightly weaker than expected. Usage might be heavier than anticipated. The margin of safety protects against unknown unknowns. How it works in investing. If I calculate that a business is worth $100 per share, I don't buy at $95 thinking I'm getting a bargain. I wait until it's $60 or $70. Why? Because my calculation might be wrong. Maybe I overestimated future growth. Maybe I underestimated competition. Maybe management makes a mistake. Maybe the economy turns down. Maybe I'm just bad at math. If I buy at $70 and I'm right that it's worth $100, I make 43% returns. If I buy at $70 and I'm wrong and it's only worth $80, I still make 14%. If I'm really wrong and it's only worth $70, I break even. But if I buy at $95 and I'm wrong, I lose money. The margin of safety protects me from my own stupidity. In career decisions, don't take a job that requires everything to go right. Take a job where even if things go moderately wrong, you'll still be fine. In relationships, don't marry someone hoping they'll change. Marry someone who's already good enough that even if they don't change, you'll be happy. In health, don't rely on perfect discipline. Build systems with built-in slack so that even when you're tired or busy, you still maintain baseline health. In finances, don't budget so tightly that one unexpected expense destroys everything. Build cushion into every plan. How I apply this? At Berkshire, we maintain massive cash reserves, often $100+ billion. People say we're being too conservative, that we should deploy all that capital. But that cash is our margin of safety. When crisis hits, and crisis always hits eventually, we have the resources to act while everyone else is scrambling. In 2008, when the financial system was collapsing, we had the capital to make extraordinary investments. We bought preferred stock in Goldman Sachs and General Electric at terms that were incredibly favorable. Why could we do that? Because We had maintained a margin of safety for years, waiting patiently. The margin of safety is what separates investors who survive from investors who don't. Your application. In every decision, ask, what if I'm wrong? What if things go badly? Will I still be okay? If the answer is no, you don't have enough margin of safety. Wait, find a better opportunity. Build more cushion. Never put yourself in a position where you need everything to go right. Part 3. How to build your latticework. Now you know the mental models. But knowing isn't enough. You need to internalize them, make them automatic. How? The same way I did. Through reading. I've read thousands of books across dozens of disciplines, not because I'm smarter than you, because I started early and never stopped. Warren and I probably spend 80% of our time reading and thinking, only 20% deciding and acting. Most people have this backwards. They spend 80% acting and 20% thinking. Then they wonder why their actions don't work out. What to read? Read broadly across disciplines. Psychology, start with Influence by Robert Cialdini and Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Biology, read Darwin, read Dawkins, understand evolution and competition. Physics, understand basic principles of energy, entropy, momentum. Mathematics, understand probability, statistics, compounding, history, read biographies, study what worked and what failed. Business, read annual reports. Study successful companies. Don't just read summaries. Don't just watch videos. Read the actual books. Deeply, take notes. Think about how principles connect across disciplines. This is hard work. It takes years. Most people won't do it. That's exactly why you should. Reading alone isn't enough. You must practice applying mental models to real decisions. Every investment decision I make, I consciously run through my checklist. Is this in my circle of competence? What's the incentive structure? What could go wrong? Inversion. What are the second and third order effects? What's the probability distribution of outcomes? Do I have sufficient margin of safety? At first, this feels slow and mechanical. But after thousands of repetitions over decades, it becomes automatic. Your brain builds neural pathways. The models become intuitive. Start small. Apply these models to everyday decisions: where to eat, what to buy, how to spend your time. Then work up to bigger decisions: career moves, relationships, investments. The more you practice, the better you get. Keep a decision journal. Here's something I wish I'd done more systematically when I was younger. Keep a journal of every major decision. Write down your reasoning. Which mental models you used. What you expected to happen. Your probability estimates. Then 6 months or a year later, review what actually happened. Where were you right? Where were you wrong? Which mental models helped? Which did you forget to apply? This feedback loop accelerates your learning dramatically. Most people make a decision, see the outcome, then construct a narrative that makes them look smart, regardless of whether they were actually right for the right reasons. A decision journal forces brutal honesty. It shows you where your thinking was flawed. Over time, you calibrate. Your probability estimates get more accurate. Your mental models get sharper. Learn from mistakes. I've made hundreds of mistakes, thousands probably. Some cost me millions of dollars. But I learned from every single one. The key is to do a proper postmortem. What decision led to this mistake? What was I thinking at the time? Which mental models did I fail to apply? What warning signs did I miss? What will I do differently next time? Most people make a mistake, feel bad for a moment, then move on without extracting the lesson. That's insane. Mistakes are the most valuable learning opportunities you'll ever have if you're willing to analyze them honestly. At Berkshire, when we make a mistake, Warren and I dissect it thoroughly. We're not interested in blame. We're interested in understanding what went wrong so we don't repeat it. This is why we've gotten better over time instead of worse. You become like the people you spend time with. If you spend time with shallow thinkers, you'll become a shallow thinker. If you spend time with deep thinkers, you'll become a deep thinker. I've been extraordinarily fortunate to spend 50-plus years working closely with Warren Buffett, one of the greatest thinkers in business history. We challenge each other. We improve each other's thinking. We catch each other's mistakes. Find people who think deeply, who read broadly, who question assumptions, who use mental models. Spend time with them. Learn from them. Think alongside them. This compounds over decades into an enormous advantage. After decades, I've seen everything: booms, busts, manias, crashes, wars, peace, technological revolutions, business transformations. Through it all, one thing has remained constant. The people who think better make better decisions. The people who make better decisions get better outcomes. And over decades, those better outcomes compound into extraordinary lives. This isn't about getting rich quick. It's not about finding the next hot stock. It's not about beating the market this quarter. It's about building a thinking system that serves you for life. Mental models are thinking tools, and like any tool, they're only valuable if you use them. Most people will watch this video, nod along, maybe take a few notes, then go back to thinking the way they've always thought. Don't be most people. Take these mental models seriously. Study them. Practice them. Apply them to every decision you make. Start with the big ones: inversion, circle of competence, incentives, compounding. Use them consciously at first. Check yourself. Am I staying in my circle? What are the real incentives here? What could go wrong? What will this look like in 10 years? Over time, these questions become automatic. They become part of how you see the world. And once that happens, you'll notice something remarkable. You'll see opportunities others miss. You'll avoid mistakes others make. You'll make decisions others can't understand until years later, when the results become obvious. This is what people call genius or luck. But it's neither. It's just better thinking tools applied consistently over decades. Warren and I aren't smarter than you. We don't work harder than you. We didn't have some special advantage you don't have. We just learned to think better. And we kept thinking better for 60-plus years without stopping. That's the whole secret. You can do this too. Start today. Read broadly. Think deeply. Apply these models. Learn from your mistakes. Give it time. In 10 years, you'll be shocked at how much better your decisions are. In 20 years, you'll be shocked at how much better your life is. In 30 years, you'll look back and realize that learning to think better was the most valuable thing you ever did. So there you have it, the mental models that made me a billionaire, not because they're magic, because they're true, not because they're complicated, because they're simple. But most people won't do the hard work of learning and applying them. Now you know what I know. The question is, what will you do with it? Will you watch another video tomorrow and forget everything I just said? Or will you start building your latticework of mental models right now, today, and keep building it for the rest of your life? The choice is yours. But I'll tell you this, if you choose the second path, if you commit to thinking better every single day for the next several decades, you'll look back on this moment as the turning point, the moment everything changed. Not because you found some secret, but because you learned to think. Now go do it. And remember, it's not about being brilliant. It's about being consistently not stupid. Master that, and everything else takes care of itself. I guarantee it. See you on the next video, revealing through the Compound Truth YouTube channel.